Despite President Trump walking back many of his more extreme tariffs, some of which even targeted places like Madagascar and a penguin-inhabited island, he announced today that he's not only keeping but increasing tariffs specifically on China, one of America's largest trading partners. Nobody expected it, not like this, and certainly not this fast. One day the fields were active, grain bins full, and the market stable. Then the new policy hit: tariffs, counter-tariffs, and suddenly the system started to buckle. Not in headlines, but in the dirt, in storage barns, and on farm balance sheets, as farmers woke to find their customers gone, their costs skyrocketing, and their futures in limbo. As of May 28, 2025, the heart of America's agriculture is under serious strain, not because of drought, pests, or falling demand, but because of a trade conflict. Export contracts have dried up. Markets that took decades to build are being lost in days. In Illinois, soybeans are going bad in silos. In Kentucky, corn is piling up with no buyers. In Iowa, farmers are rallying at courthouses with signs reading, "Don't trade our farms away." This isn't just a talking point. It's an economic emergency, worsening by the hour. The numbers aren't just bleak, they're devastating. Forward export contracts for the upcoming harvest are 88% below their 5-year average for soybeans. Corn is down almost 30%. Wheat exports have virtually stopped. China, once the biggest buyer of American crops, has placed no new orders for soybeans, corn, or wheat. Instead, they've shifted focus. Brazil, Argentina, and Canada are now their preferred suppliers. China has signed memorandums of understanding with Argentine exporters for everything from soy to vegetable oil. They've halted imports from 3 major U.S. agribusinesses. No announcements, no press conferences, just radio silence. Even the so-called trade truce announced this month, a 90-day pause on new tariffs, hasn't helped. In fact, just minutes ago, word broke that President Trump has confirmed that the pause applies to every country except China. Yes, some headline tariffs were dialed down. A 145% levy became 30%, and China's 125% retaliation dropped to 10%. But go ask a farmer in Nebraska or Kansas if that makes a difference. They'll tell you it doesn't. Even a 10% tariff kills the deal when Brazil is selling the same product cheaper and tariff-free. And that's the real threat. This isn't just a tough year, it's a structural shift. Once a buyer like China switches partners, they don't return out of loyalty. They stick with what's cheaper, more reliable, and better integrated. They're building new ports, signing new routes, backing new harvests. Meanwhile, U.S. farmers are left to plant crops with no guaranteed market. That uncertainty poisons every business decision, from how much seed to buy to whether to fix the tractor to if they should even bother selling. Prices are whipsawing. Soybean futures jumped this week based on a USDA forecast suggesting a smaller crop. But the rally has no foundation. One tweet from Beijing or one policy shift in D.C., and the market could tank by sunrise. Farmers are tired, operating day-to-day on rumors and speculation. Meanwhile, input costs from fertilizer to equipment are rising because those imports are tariffed too. And it's not just happening in the fields. It's in the factories, the grain terminals, the rail yards. Bonded warehouses are overflowing. Rental prices for storage have quadrupled. Customs is overwhelmed. Across the Midwest, grain elevators say they may not have room for the next harvest because the last one hasn't moved. One elevator operator put it plainly: "We're filling up and there's nowhere for it to go." It's a supply chain crisis, and it's political. In Washington, 12 states have filed a lawsuit against the federal government. Those states are taking the Trump administration to the U.S. Court of International Trade in New York, aiming to block the tariffs altogether. Their claim? That the White House overstepped its authority, using emergency powers to bypass Congress and impose duties under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a move they say is now causing irreparable harm to rural economies and undermining constitutional checks and balances. The lawsuit is still winding its way through court, but out in farm country, the judgment has already been delivered. Patience is wearing thin. Quiet frustration is turning into public protest, and those who once said they'd take the hit for the country are now asking how much longer they're expected to bleed. In coffee shops from South Dakota to Indiana, farmers are saying the same thing. They no longer believe the markets are coming back. They believe Brazil has won, that their kids will never farm the land, and that they may be the last generation to do this work. And that pain is surfacing in more than just bank accounts. Rural mental health hotlines are seeing a surge in calls. Suicide prevention workshops are now being held in church basements. Agricultural extension offices are printing step-by-step guides on how to talk to lenders when the math doesn't work. At a recent co-op meeting, one elderly farmer in Iowa broke down in tears, saying he may need to sell the farm before his grandson finishes high school. These are not dramatizations, they are real, and they are happening right now. Meanwhile, Congress is debating whether to revive the 2018 bailout programs, direct payments meant to offset the impact of lost exports. Some lawmakers are pushing for $20 billion in emergency funding. But out in the fields, there's no applause, because checks don't restore markets. Checks don't rebuild trust with international buyers. Checks are temporary patches on a trade system that's falling apart. Even among the few sectors that back tariffs, like beef, shrimp, and, a few coastal fisheries, there's this growing recognition. Tariffs might protect some, but honestly, they're hurting far more. The soybean industry warns that the lost market share to Brazil may never come back. Wheat growers say China has redirected long-term contracts to Canada and Australia. Corn producers mention that ethanol demand has dipped, and dairy farmers are watching their profits shrink under new Canadian and Mexican tariffs. While the administration promotes new deals with the United Kingdom and India, most farmers say those markets are just too small, too slow, and honestly too late to help. And beyond trade, there's the logistics collapse. Trucks sit idle, rail cars aren't moving, ports are quieter than they've been in years. Even when grain is available, the inputs to grow the next crop are missing. Tractor parts are on back order. Pesticides are scarce. Fertilizer is up in price. New construction of barns, silos, and irrigation systems has slowed to a crawl, squeezed by rising steel costs and shrinking margins. Farmers are pulling back, canceling upgrades, delaying repairs, reducing labor, taking out emergency operating loans, and hoping that interest rates don't spike. This is not a story of resilience anymore. It's a story about limits, and the country must ask, what happens when those limits are broken? The signs are everywhere. The silos are overflowing. The store shelves are thinning. The GDP is being revised down. And the very people who grow America's food are saying they're not sure how much longer they can keep going. This isn't about one tariff or one decision. It's about years of instability, about trade wars that became routine, and policies made by officials who've never set foot on a farm. And for those farmers still planting, still harvesting, still trying to believe in tomorrow, the future no longer looks like growth. It looks like a countdown. Will the tariffs be lifted? Will the courts step in? Will the markets ever return? No one knows. But if they don't, the collapse won't come with a bang. It will come with quiet auctions, with empty fields, with barns that are never rebuilt. So stay informed. Stay aware. Because what's unfolding in America's heartland isn't just a trade dispute. It's the edge of a system. And the real question is, can it survive the weight being placed on it? Stay tuned for more updates as they unfold.